Hi, well, I've just seen um, the second Champions League semi-final between this one was between Tottenham and Ajax. Tottenham were 1-0 down from the first leg, and they were playing away at Ajax, and they went down two goals in the first half. So they had to get three in the second, which they did, and the last one being at the last minute of stoppage time to win and go through. And this followed yesterday, where Liverpool overturned a 3-0 deficit against Barcelona when Liverpool played the second leg at home and won 4-3, as in they scored four unanswered goals. So both of those were really unexpected. It was expected that Liverpool were just too far down in terms of the goals conceded. They wouldn't be able to score four. It was thought, or even three, without any goal being scored by an opposition, including Messi and Suarez and all these world-class players. And Ajax, bearing in mind that they'd been beaten Juventus and Real Madrid to get that far, were expected to win because they'd actually beaten Tottenham in Tottenham's own stadium. So in front of their own fans, they'd have the home advantage on top of that. So why did they? Why did the results end up that way? And I think the main reason is probably luck. It's the law of probabilities. Sometimes you will get upsets like this. And after all, Tottenham and Liverpool are also very good sides. Liverpool are second in the league. They may well win the Premier League on the last game of the season. And Tottenham are also up there in the Premier League. Very good side. In a particularly competitive league this season, with the amount of money being spent and everything. And in the case of Ajax, although they've beaten these top quality sides, those have been upsets overall. So perhaps the difference in quality between the sides is not so great. But that's not the only reason. I think a major factor also can be down to, I suppose, in terms of the psychological factors behind the performance of the players. And I think that has to do with how the situations are framed. So in both of those situations, the Ajax and Barcelona had gone in as firm favourites. And when you go in as favourites, it could be two things can happen. It could give you confidence, but I think what's more likely to happen, especially if you're favourites by quite a margin, more than perhaps you should be, bearing in mind that you're playing quality opposition. One of the key factors is by being favourites that you invite a lot of pressure, and you end up having everything to lose and not so much to gain. Whereas the other side, who are not expected to win anyway, have much more to gain because they're expected to lose anyway. The only way that the opposition will experience pressure in this situation is if they thought that they might get humiliated and they might get beaten really badly, to disappoint their fans. So the pressure makes a big difference, especially by teams which are not as unevenly matched as is perceived. Of course, they have their weaknesses as well. I think if you look at the fact that they have so much to lose, you start with that situation for Barcelona and Ajax, And actually, what happened in the case of Ajax was a 1-0 difference is not really such a big deal. But then, of course, they scored 2 goals in the first half. So when it came to the second half, which was the last sort of big break before they play again, it was almost like at the end of 3 quarters, because they've had the 2 halves in the first leg and then 1 half here. For that final quarter, the second half of the second leg, that's when Ajax are 3-0 up, and yeah, they literally, the odds are massively in their favour. And again, they have everything to lose and nothing to gain. And in Tottenham's case, they have everything to gain, unless it means that they're going to get humiliated 5-0, 6-0. But at the same time, if you think about it, if they push forward and they score a goal or 2, and then they end up losing, and Ajax score 3 or 4, they end up losing, 6-2 or something. Well, that's a bigger margin than losing, say, 3-0, as they would have been headed for normally if they played their normal style, or 3-0 or 4-0. But it's going to be bigger or the same margin. But at the same time, people are going to say, look, at least they tried something different, they had a go, and it didn't pay off, because Ajax is such a good side. And that's what they did. They made changes, they got more attacking. They also did make a tactical change in terms of putting Llorente up front, who's a big guy, fixed one of the central defenders, Blind, and then he would knock down so that, the quick guys like Son and Lucas could then run onto the balls. But I think that, basically it came to that situation. And likewise with Barcelona, Liverpool had only one option, and that was to attack. Again, they had a substitution which worked. Robertson goes off, and then you have Wijnaldum comes on, who's, scores goals, is really quick, lots of stamina, pace, energy, and with a point to prove, because he was very angry about being benched. So yeah, the tactical changes make a difference as well. But I think the overall point here is the narrative. If you're an Ajax or Barcelona player, you at some stage you realize that you're 3-0 up. It's very, very, very unlikely that the opposition are going to win. Everybody expects you to win. So what you can't afford to do is lose. So then your natural focus is going to be on maintaining a solid shape, defending throughout. Defending is the first priority, and then attacking is really a bonus. Why? Because you don't need any more goals. In fact, you can afford to concede goals, and you'll still go through. So, your focus should be, don't concede anything at all. 1 or 2 might go in, but you're going to go through, But the first thing is to focus entirely on defense. And that's for both teams. The alternative is to do what you naturally do, which is possession football and attack. But then the Ajax and Barcelona players would think, right, well, what's going to happen is, we might end up conceding a lot of goals and losing the tie, and we might not score anything, or we might score, but we score 1 or 2 goals, and then people are going to say that we almost lost the game, or we lost the game, through being reckless, through not caring, through being stupid and not knowing game management. Whereas I think subconsciously, although they won't admit it, they thought that if by any chance we lose, having defended, then we won't get criticized, because we are going to be doing exactly what the fans and lay people and everyone else in the world expects us to do when we're 3-0 up, which is to focus entirely on defence, and any kind of attacking is a bonus because we've just been careful. We've shown respect to the opponent and all of that, because we're in the advantage, and we're expected to defend. So they would, so that would be their take on it. That really we can't go wrong if we defend. We're probably going to win. We're probably going to keep the not high probability we're going to win because we're ahead anyway. Maintain the status quo, and we're going to win. And also the fans, we're not really risking anything. The worst case scenario, if we lose, it's the best way to lose. We're going to get the least criticism this way, but we're probably going to win. And in any case, if we win, everyone's going to say, look, we did a clinical job, we won the match, and we didn't do anything reckless. So it's going to be the thing to do, but the problem with that is that when you then look at Liverpool and especially I just watched Tottenham, all of a sudden only one team looked like they were going to win this match. Only one team looked like they were trying to get a goal and trying to take the initiative. One team looked proactive and the other team looked reactive. And you'd expect the attacker to be proactive and the defender to be reactive, and that is what was happening. But as a result, you never thought that Ajax were going to score a goal. You always thought that Tottenham were going to. It was just a matter of time. And the only question was, could they do it in that time? And as it happened, they did it at the very last minute, which also meant that throughout the whole game, the whole of the pressure was really on Ajax because, they were expected to defend, they were expected to soak up all the attacks, and they were expected to win at every point for the whole 90 minutes. So they were just expected to win, and that's a lot of pressure considering they don't really have an outlet to score more goals, and they're just trying to contain the situation. And if you look at Ajax and Barcelona, that does not play into their strengths. If because their strength is possession football and attack. So, they're actually, and one of the reasons that they defend and don't concede goals is because they've always got hold of the ball, because they're playing possession football with a focus on trying to attack and score. And they missed a trick because the opposition had to attack. So if the opposition has to attack, then you have to accept that you're going to get hurt no matter what. The opposition are much more likely to score a goal than if they were just playing normally. You have to accept that. Okay? That's just the law of probabilities in terms of the style of play that's being put to you. So you have to decide, are you best positioned to just try and absorb that and, concede fewer goals in that situation than you would normally? Or are you better served playing your natural game and, defending when you can, but always thinking about scoring a goal through exploiting the changes in the opposition, like gaps that open up behind. And that is really what happened. I think that it put them off their normal plan. They couldn't play possession football. They tried to play, Barcelona, Ajax tried to play it safe. They kept everyone in defense, and they only kept, one or two forward players who were to hit the team on the counter-attack. But then it never felt like they'd really planned for this situation. It didn't feel like they got the ball out for a counter-attack. They would get the ball out and the ball would land, but then these two players would think, who were outfield, would think, right, what do we do with it now? Do we try and hold on to it? Do we try and score? Even the shooting was sort of half-hearted as well. So they weren't as clinical as normal, because their thinking is just taking it one step longer, because their first thought is, we can't concede a goal. you know, let us defend and let's just think about anything else after, because we're not going to gain anything by scoring. We're going to gain something by stopping the opposition from scoring. That's the name of the game. And I think that for a team like Ajax and Barcelona, which depends on possession and attacking, scoring goals, that and their defense depending on possession as well, I think that it became very difficult. They're not used to that kind of style, and they didn't really have a plan B in this situation, you know. And I think that, so if you look at Ajax, their possession was actually less than Tottenham's, as well as the chances that they created. So by trying to be something that they weren't, just because that's what made logical sense, and would have made the fans happy and everyone else happy, on the outside, it meant that as a team they weren't as efficient as they could have been. They weren't as effective as they could have been. And same applies to Barcelona as well. So they basically became a defensive team which was relying on a counterattack. So if you had a team like Inter Milan in that position, that would have worked, because it would have been a perfect situation for them, because they're used to catching teams on the break. But they're not like that. That's not their style. So they didn't thrive off that. So, how do you solve that problem? You could teach them to deal with that situation by being a counter-attacking team. But assuming that then they just can't play that way, then it should be a possession-based game. So the next question is, how do you play possession-based, attacking, proactive football? How can you adapt that to dealing with a team which is in all-out attack against you? That is the question. And and I think the key difference, really, what would have made a massive difference, is having that plan B for a team which is in all-out attack, and being proactive all the time. So when they're defending, being proactive, not being reactive, not just waiting for the opposition to do something. They have to think, right, we stop the opposition, but then what's our next move going to be? Who are we going to kick it to start the next, to score the goal that needs to come as a result of the breakdown of play? But that is a counter-attacking style, mind you. So again, they have to make the choice. Can they do that? If they can't do that, if they're only good at breaking, if they're not good at breaking down opposition and attacking on the counter, then they have to work out how to play possession-based football from the deep. How can they confidently do that, and work up? I'm sure they must be able to train that, because otherwise every team would just be on all-out attack against teams like Barcelona and Spain. Clearly, that would be a very bad idea, because they'd be torn apart, But yeah, and I think the name of the game is try and, when you look at the score should not govern how you play. What should govern how you play is, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are the opposition's strengths, what are the opposition's weaknesses, and what gives you the best combination, to win. How much of playing to your strengths and decreasing your weaknesses can you play, whilst also countering the opposition's strengths and maximizing their weaknesses. And the score should, and ultimately you should really just try and play the perfect match through the 90 minutes without worrying about the score. The only thing that the score could help you with or assist you with should be, in terms of predicting how the opposition will react to it. So if it's a perfect opposition team, then they shouldn't be reacting to the score either. Okay. But in reality, they would have to react to it in that situation, because if they are losing, then clearly they have to attack and get the winner. Okay. Or if something's not worked for them, as it hasn't before, then they have to change something and try that. So what the team has to do is to predict what those changes might be, and have that in mind, and think what weaknesses might come up, or what changes in strengths might come up, and then how will this team then react to that. So that basically, and also how can they how can they react to it, but how can they also make something happen? Because ultimately you want to take as little pressure as possible, because it's not going to help your game. It's a balance, isn't it? As they said, love and work. You have to be passionate about the game, love it, so then it won't feel like pressure. And just keep working hard, but you'll enjoy it. It's about taking responsibility, not pressure, that kind of thing, reframing the situation. But then whatever's left in terms of pressure from outside, it's about dealing with that properly. It's about trying to take as little of negative pressure as you can, and in terms of what the outcome is, at least the pressure from the outcome and pressure from what other people will think. Trust yourself and be proactive. Okay, you will always have to be reactive. When the opposition have the ball, you have to react to it, but you also have to be proactive in terms of getting the ball back and then doing something with the ball to try and score a goal, or try and keep hold of possession in a safe way, whilst ultimately aiming to score a goal. Because you can't just mindlessly just aim to keep possession. It has to be towards some objective. That's it, really. So be proactive. Use pressure, as a positive, in terms of as responsibility, chance to be a hero and all of that. And negative pressure, don't absorb it. But be aware that it can affect the opposition. It might not. They might be very strong mentally. That's the difference in terms of mentality, isn't it? But if they're not that strong mentally, or as strong as you, it might open up some opportunities. It'll certainly change the style of the opposition. So just predict that. Think about what weaknesses might come through and try to exploit those. And try and maximize your strengths. That's it.